What's up, YouTube? I am the Vanilla Nerd, and today I want to do a general review of the Star Wars Prequel Trilogy. I'm excited to do this one. I did the original trilogy a while back, and this one is going to follow that same pattern and will be really good and a really good complement to it. So, yeah. Just a heads up, this will be a spoiler-filled review, as are most of my reviews. If ever one of my reviews is not spoiler-filled, I will make it clear, but I'm trying to be a little bit more upfront about that at the beginning of my videos. So yeah, this one has spoilers. So, jumping right into the review, the first thing I want to say is it's almost impossible to talk about the prequel trilogy without comparing it to the original trilogy, so I'm not even going to try. And in that light, I will say that I think the prequel trilogy is very flawed, but still very good. I think the original trilogy overall is a stronger trilogy, but I think the prequels have some really good stuff and are still good Star Wars stories worth watching. In particular, I think the prequels shine in their plot, their world building, and their action scenes. We'll get into that more later, but for now, that's just kind of my general overview. Now, you'll notice that I didn't really reference the characters as being a strength of the prequel trilogy, and I think, unfortunately, the prequel trilogy's characters bring it down a few notches. Whereas I think the original trilogy had fantastic characters with kind of middle-of-the-road plot, the prequel trilogy has a fantastic plot with middle-of-the-road characters. And I know some of you are going to say, no, the characters are fantastic and deep and amazing, and I do think they have some good qualities to them, and I want to address those, but I can't do that in good faith without addressing their flaws as well. So let's get into it, starting off with our main character, Anakin. Now, Anakin is an interesting main character because throughout this trilogy, we get to see his fall to the dark side, and that is really cool. I feel like with Anakin, though, there's a problem in that he's not very well executed as a character in the first couple of movies. In episode 1, he's a kid. And I don't really mind that he's a kid, but it does cause me to stretch my suspension of disbelief when he takes down a droid ship and pilots a starfighter perfectly and all that stuff. And so I'm kind of neutral towards him being a kid. In number 2, as a teenager, it's way worse. He's whiny, he has these creepy stares, he has some robotic dialogue. It's just not very well executed. And I'm not trying to place blame. Whether it was Hayden Christensen's acting or the writing that he was given or George Lucas's direction on the day of those scenes, I don't know. And I'm not trying to place blame. All I know is that episode 2 struggles because teenage Anakin is not a very well done character. This all changes in episode 3. Episode 3 Anakin is so cool. I really like him. I think he's awesome. I think he's fun. And seeing his tragic fall, seeing him, quote, make a deal with the devil in order to try and save his wife is fantastic and compelling. I think he's a good character. I just think he had a rough start. And that's a problem for this trilogy when 2 out of 3 of the movies, your main character isn't that compelling. Now, before we move on from Anakin, I want to acknowledge the importance of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the TV show. I grew up on this show. It is absolutely fantastic. It is so well done and so cool. And it augments the prequels so well. And nowhere can that be more clearly seen than in Anakin Skywalker. Anakin is done so well in this show. He's this action hero that's compassionate, that would do anything to save his friends, so much so that he even will turn to the dark side to try and save his friends. There's many episodes where you see him touching the dark side in order to help those he loves. And it just works so well, and it's a big reason why I like Anakin more in the prequels. And a big reason why I like his character more, despite some of the flaws and shortcomings that we see in the prequel movies. So I want to acknowledge that. I will do a full review of the Clone Wars later, but for now, that's what I want to say. Next, I want to talk about Padme, and I feel like Padme, the character, has the opposite problem of Anakin, where she was really well done in the first 2 movies and not done super well in the last movie. But we'll talk about that. In the first movie, I want to just acknowledge that she's really cool, really awesome. She's a queen at 14. She develops a brilliant strategy to take back her planet, and she executes it phenomenally, and it works really, really well. In the second movie, she also takes command. In this scene right here, she has a blaster, and she survives the Battle of Geonosis when so many other Jedi don't. And Sure, she might have some plot armor there, but still, I think that's impressive. I think that's cool, and it's awesome. In the third movie, however, she wasn't given that much to do, which is unfortunate because she was so cool in the previous two films. But in this one, she's just kind of there. Now, I know she was pregnant, so it wouldn't make much sense for her to pick up a blaster and start getting things done. But that's not a good enough excuse to have her character completely sidelined. Pregnant women can still be very, very cool. What I will say about her character in the third movie and what I liked about her is that she is the voice of reason to Anakin. Anakin's fall is so tragic because his wife is there telling him the right things to do. She encouraged him to go to the Jedi Council. She encouraged him to go to Obi-Wan. She encouraged him to do the right thing, and yet he continually refused, and that makes his fall that much more sad. So, in conclusion, I really like Padme. I think she's a really cool character. I think she could have been used a little bit better in the third movie, but I think overall she's an wonderful addition to Star Wars, and she absolutely lives up to being the mother of Luke and Leia. Next, I want to talk about Obi-Wan, and I really like Obi-Wan. I think his character is handled perfectly in all three movies and done really, really well. What I like about Obi-Wan is that I have a really strong real-world connection with him because I've met so many people like him who are obedient to a fault. He believes in the Jedi Order so much, and he wants to follow all their rules as best as he can because he believes that will make him the best Jedi ever. And unfortunately, that's just not true. By being so obedient and by following all these rules, it causes a lot of problems. And throughout the trilogy, we see him slowly realize the Jedi Order is imperfect, and I really like that for his character, and I really like him as a character. His very obedience causes a lot of friction with him and Anakin, and that is fantastic. I love that. And I love how George Lucas puts it. He is the older brother that had to raise his younger brother. He's not a Jedi Master that should have had to raise Anakin. It should have been Qui-Gon, and unfortunately, Obi-Wan was the one that had to do it. And so I think Obi-Wan did a good job, but not a great job. Qui-Gon would have done so much better by Anakin and would have helped him a lot better. Obi-Wan was too much of a stickler for the rules, and unfortunately that contributed to Anakin's fall to the dark side. And it worked so well, and I've seen it in real life, and it just, not that I've actually seen people fall to the dark side, but I've seen someone be super obedient to the point of frustration, and I like that for Obi-Wan, and it makes sense, and it works. Lastly, I want to talk about some honorable mentions on the good guy side of things. Qui-Gon Jinn is perhaps my favorite Jedi ever because he's what the Jedi are supposed to be. He's not what the Jedi kind of turned into. They're more prideful selves. Yoda was done really well. Mace Windu was done really well. He's a really cool character. I like the good guy characters, and I like seeing them in the prequel trilogy. But we can't talk about character without ending on our big bad evil guy, Sheev Palpatine. And I love Palpatine in the prequel trilogy. He is so evil. He's a master manipulator. He's fantastic. I like how he doesn't need a backstory. He just is evil. He's a Sith, plain and simple. He wants more power. And I like the means that he uses to get it. He manipulates Anakin to become Anakin's friend. He uses the Jedi's own standoffishness and the fact that the Jedi have alienated themselves from Anakin because Anakin is a little bit more of a free spirit. He needs less rules, but the Jedi are like, no, more rules. And Palpatine's just over there like, hey, I don't care about rules. Tell me whatever you need. And he knows about the Tusken Raider attack. He knows about his struggles with his mother, and he manipulates Anakin perfectly to become his new apprentice, and it's great. On top of that, he manipulates the Jedi even more by simply being the Chancellor in front of their very eyes and them failing to recognize it, and by orchestrating a war so that he can get more power and so that the Jedi use their own hubris. The Jedi believe, hey, we can win this war. We can win this fight just as we've done 1,000 other times. But then they fail and they struggle, and Palpatine uses that against them, and it's so good. And I love Palpatine. He's so evil. He's so smart. He's so well done. So with Palpatine, I already kind of gave away a lot of the plot, but I do really like the plot of the prequel trilogy. It is really well done. I enjoy how the first movie centers around a little trade dispute that gets Palpatine more power, allows him to become the Chancellor. And I enjoy how the Jedi have to get back to Coruscant, and they run into all these problems along the way. It is classic storytelling at its finest. So good. So well done. Episode 2 is where the plot really falls for me. I love the clones. I love the beginning with a murder mystery. Why is someone trying to kill Padme? But then they don't follow through with that. In the middle, they just kind of shoehorn in this love story that takes up the entire middle act of the movie and is so isolated. Like nothing else happens. Why did they not just have like bounty hunters chasing Padme throughout the entire middle act, and Anakin could kind of show off his powers and being able to defeat all these bounty hunters, and they could fall in love along the way? They didn't need to be so isolated, and yet they did, and so I really don't like the second movie as much, but that's another story for another day when I review it in full. What I would simply say is the second movie kind of struggles, but overall its plot is good. I like how they created these armies out of nowhere, but it makes sense. Palpatine had this grand plan to orchestrate a war, and it worked so well, and I like it a lot. Number 3, probably the best plot out of all of them in terms of just Anakin's tragic fall. You open up with this amazing first act where you get to see the friendship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, which kind of wasn't there in number 2, but now it is here. And it's such a good friendship that by the end of the film, when Anakin and Obi-Wan are forced to fight each other, it is tragic, it is sad, and Obi-Wan delivers that powerful line, "You were like a brother to me," which isn't just sad because he had to fight his own brother, but it's also sad because he really was the brother. He wasn't his master. He wasn't a father figure, and that's what's so tragic and one of the contributing factors to Anakin's fall. And so I really like the plot of the prequel trilogy. I think it's very well done, and its overall thought process is great. It just might not have been executed the best, especially in episode 2. Next, we come to the setting, and this is where the prequels really shine in their world building and in the expansion of the Star Wars universe, the Star Wars setting. And that is so cool because the prequels did so much and built up so much more lore and history behind the Star Wars universe than even the originals in many cases. With the prequels, firstly, let's just talk about the new planets they introduced. You got things like Mustafar, Naboo, Coruscant, these beautiful planets that are given rich and distinctive looks. You know, I know what Coruscant looks like, and it's so cool to see an entire planet that's a city. That's really, really fascinating and really, really interesting. You've got Naboo, which is this beautiful, gorgeous place that just has that distinct domed vibe and the palace look and just everything. It's got the cool starfighters. It's a very artistic looking city. And then you got Mustafar, which is this lava planet where the greatest duel in Star Wars lightsaber history is filmed on, and we get to see it, and it's awesome. It's really, really cool. So there's a lot of cool planets that are added, but more than just the planets, you have the politics. Now, when it comes to politics, I acknowledge that they are slow, boring scenes that aren't very well executed. Some are done better than others, but for the most part, it feels like it often drags the movies down, and it's a big detractor for a lot of people. That being said, I do love the lore and knowledge we learn from the politics. It makes sense. You have a corrupt government, and then good intentioned people who just want a better government choose to separate. And Darth Sidious, our evil bad guy, manipulates the good intentions of these people to who want to have a better government to make a war start, a galactic civil war between the Separatists and the Republic. It's genius, it's brilliant, it's awesome, and it's so evil, it's so manipulative. On top of that, seeing Palpatine use a small trading fiasco to manipulate his way to becoming Supreme Chancellor of the biggest government in the galaxy is brilliant and so smart. And then he wants more power. So what does he do? He orchestrates a war so that people give him emergency powers. He manipulates the people, makes them see, I'm a good chancellor. I'm amazing. Keep me in office longer. I'm great. And everyone loves him. They think he's their leader. They think he's amazing. They think he's fantastic. And so he manipulates it so much to the point where at the end of the war, he is able to say, I'm going to make myself emperor, and everyone loves it. As Padme says, this is how democracy ends, with a thunderous applause. And it's fantastic, so well done. And so I don't love the politics. I think some of the politics scenes are boring. I think they could have been reworked. I think they could have been done better. That being said, I think it's so good to see how the Star Wars galaxy works and functions and what the state was before the Empire rose to power. And you realize, oh, wow, that's how the Empire did it. And it's fantastic. And I do enjoy it, if not enjoy how they executed it. Next, I want to talk about the world building of the Jedi and the Sith. And right out of the gate, I love the fact that the word Sith was never actually used in the original trilogy, meaning that it was coined and mostly used in the prequel trilogy, which is crazy to me because I've always grown up knowing that there's Jedi and Sith, and that's just the way it is. And so that's really interesting and really cool. On top of that, we learn about the Rule of Two. We learn about Darth Plagueis. We learn about Force Lightning a little bit more with Dooku. It's pretty cool. And then on the Jedi side of things, we see that the Jedi are waning. Their power is growing weaker. They are becoming so focused on rules and organization and so wrapped up in the government, in the politics, in the Senate, that they can't see beyond that, can't see the people that need their help, and they join a war that they most definitely should not have joined, which causes even more problems and hurts their order. They lose so many Jedi to this war, so many Jedi to the battles, and in the end, it makes them weaker and easier for the clone troopers to kill them. And so it's really well done. It's really fascinating to see the states of the Jedi and the Sith and to see how they operate more and to learn more about that. And I really enjoy that. I almost completely forgot one of my favorite things about the prequel trilogy, and that is the lightsaber battles. The lightsaber battles are so cool and so well done. They're well choreographed, they're quick, they're fast-paced, they use a lot of force powers. It's just really, really cool and really, really well done, and it's one of my favorite things about the prequel trilogy because they have some of the best lightsaber fights in all of Star Wars. The animated shows like the Clone Wars and the Rebels come close. They have some cool lightsaber battles of their own, but the prequels do it best, and they do it in live action, and it's so cool, and I love it. So yeah, whether it's planets, politics, or space wizards, the prequel trilogy really expanded the Star Wars universe tenfold, way more than the original trilogy did, and I think that's amazing. I think that's cool, and I'm really grateful that we have the prequel trilogy. So, in conclusion, the prequel trilogy is flawed. Some of the plots in the movies have issues. Some of the characters aren't the best executed, but some of them are very well executed. The Emperor, Obi-Wan are done really, really well. And the world building and the setting is absolutely fantastic. So they're flawed, but they're good. And I still like the prequel trilogy. I have a lot of nostalgia for the prequel trilogy. And I really like that they are a part of Star Wars. They are a good and worthy addition, as Mace Windu would say. So that's all I've got for you today. That's how I feel about the prequel trilogy.